here to the Republican plot here in Glasnevin, to this ceremony in commemoration of one of Ireland's greatest heroes. I'd particularly like to welcome our elected representatives from Dáil and Shannon and from the local authorities, relatives of Thomas Ashe, one of whom will be laying the wreath with Cathal, and as well as that, those who travelled from far and near across the country. I'd like particularly to thank the band for travelling from here today from Carduff in County Monaghan. And there are 27 members in the band, and in fact, you have a grandfather, a father and a son, 3 generations playing in the band today, and that I think must be nearly unique. The band is the Thomas Ashe Band, and it was founded 100 years ago this year. So it's a very, very appropriate band to act for us here today. I'd also like to thank our colour party, led by Aidan O'Connor, who's a great-grandson of Sean Lamass, Mags O'Donnell and David Byrne. Now I'd just like maybe to say a few words about the Republican plot here in Glasnevin. It was purchased in the 30s by Eamon de Valera and by John Oration. And the purpose of the graves is specified as being the interment of persons who took an active part in the struggle of Irish independence during the period 1916-1923. And Eamon de Valera and John Reynolds acted as trustees of the plot until John Reynolds' death in 1947, when his wife took his place. In 1963, new trustees were appointed to replace them, and they were Sean Ciocala, Iar Uachtaráin na hÉireann, Oscar Traynor, who was very active in the War of Independence, Vivian de Valera, Conor Maguire, who also came from a family who were hugely involved, and Owen Ryan, who was the son, of course, of James Ryan, who had been in the GPO in 1916, Eamon Martin and Desmond Reynolds. And in the 31st of July 1964, they had an option to buy or purchase additional graves, and they acted on that option, and the extra graves were purchased. So I'd now like to ask Lil Skillis, who I admire for the historical research she has done and for the clarity and the readability of the books that she has published. She's from the Liberties of Dublin, and she's the author of The Battle for Dublin, a fascinating account of the fall of the Forecourts in 1923. And recently she published a book called authored a book called The Burning of the Custom House in 1921. So I'd like to ask Liz now to address you on the historical background to Thomas Ashe and Lauro Liz Liebenish. Good morning.
Thanks very much, Eamon. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Oh, is this working? Yeah. It's an honour to actually be standing here today to talk about Thomas Ashe. And 100 years ago today, a small group of volunteers in prison in Mountjoy Jail drew up a list of demands to be presented to the prison authorities the next day. They weren't demands to be released. Their demand was to be treated as political prisoners. Although the British authorities saw them as criminals, they refused to be treated as such. If their demands were not met, they would protest, firstly by destroying themselves, and as a last resort, to go on hunger strike. Amongst this group of men was Thomas Ashe, who was to die a little over a week after these demands were made. To understand why and how he came to die in such circumstances, we need to look at the life of Thomas Ashe. And he was born in 1885, one of 10 children born to Gregory Ashe and Ellen Hannafin in Kinnaird, County Kerry. His father was a huge influence on young Thomas, instilling in him and all his children a love of Irish culture, music, history, identity, politics, poetry and singing. From an early age, Thomas was aware of the social injustice that exists in Ireland and was politicised. The land war was raging, and Thomas would have witnessed many scenes where tenant farmers were being victimised by the bailiffs and the RIC acting on behalf of landlords. He was a good student and loved Irish history and was a fluent Gaelic speaker. He was a member of the Gaelic League, and in his later life as a teacher, he would instill in his students the same love for the Irish language and Irish history. He was a keen sportsman with a strong physique, and hurling was one of his favourite sports. His love for his country could not be underestimated, and like many of his generation, Ashe was not content in hoping that one day Ireland might be granted some form of self-government from Britain with home rule. Ashe knew his history and was well aware of the previous attempts by Irish patriots to strike a blow for freedom, and how those attempts were put down by the authorities. As a member of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, Ashe knew that one day he would get to strike another blow for freedom. In 1907, Ashe qualified as a teacher, and 1 year later he was appointed principal of Carduff National School in Lusk, a position he held until the 19th of April 1916. Like anything that he was involved in, be it sport, music, the Gaelic League, he made a positive contribution, and this can certainly be said of his time at Carduff, where he was very popular among both the students and the community in Lusk in general. He didn't waste his time in Lusk. He formed the Black Raven pipe band in 1910, and many of its members would also fight with Ashe when his time came. He also organised plays and freshened in the district. Once he got an idea into his head, he was not to be deterred. As Paddy Doyle, who was a member of the Black Raven brand and was in the same IRB circle, recalled of his comrade, and he said he would never lead to do anything wrong. Everything Tom Ashe did, no matter what it was, he had a motive for. At this time, political atmosphere in Ireland was changing. We had the formation of the Ulster Volunteer Force, and then also the formation of the Irish Volunteers in 1914, and also the lockout, which had a huge effect on Thomas Ashe. And he was a great admirer of James Larkin, but especially James Connolly, who he would later serve under in 1916. And Thomas Ashe was a founding member of the Irish Volunteers when they were set up in November, and he formed a unit in Fingal. He was appointed Commandant of the 5th Battalion, which became the Fingal Battalion in 1915. His skills as an organiser was recognised not just by the volunteers, but also by the Gaelic League, of which he was a member of the executive. And in 1914, he was sent to America with Diarmuid Lynch to raise funds for the organisation. On his return in late 1914, he threw himself back into his work with volunteers, training his men using guerrilla tactics and forming them into flying columns, training that would be essential when Easter week came. At the time of the Rising, there were volunteer companies in Lusk, Sword and Donaghbate, to name a few, who would all have been commanded by Thomas Ashe. And as a member of the IRB, he was aware that plans were afoot for a rising, and when the time came, he answered the call. And ideally, like his other comrades in the Irish Volunteers, he would have had a far superior number of men with him on Easter Sunday, but of course the countermanding order, it changed everything. But when he got the call that he was to mobilise on Easter Monday, with about 70 men, they rallied and were prepared to go. Initially, he did have approximately 70 men underneath him. However, that number was reduced when James Connolly sent word that he needed reinforcements to be sent to the GPO and also the Medici Institute in Dublin City. Ashe's second in command was Richard McClellan, and together they oversaw one of the most successful engagements undertaken by the volunteers during the Easter Rising. And Ashe's main responsibility was to cut communications in North County Dublin, which they succeeded in doing. His small unit captured Swords and Donaghbate RIC barracks and captured a number of arms. However, it was Friday the 28th of April that would be the day when Ashe and his men were put to the test. Ashe decides to capture the RIC barracks in Ashbourne. On reaching the barracks, Ashe gave the police the chance to surrender. The police opened fire, and so began the Battle of Ashbourne. And reinforcements were soon to arrive from the RIC. And despite the relatives being outnumbered at least 2 to 1, Ashe ordered his men to stand firm. Their training in guerrilla tactics had now come into place. With his men in position, they opened fire on the advancing RIC convoy, which consisted of some 80 RIC men and at least 20 cars. Like the other captains of Easter week, Ashe was at the helm of the fight, and volunteer Jack Devine said it. He wouldn't draw back from anything. Tom Ashe was a desperately fearless man. He didn't mind being on the fire. The Battle of Ashbourne lasted roughly 5 hours, after which the RIC surrendered. They suffered heavy losses, approximately 12 killed and 20 wounded. The volunteers lost 2 men and 5 wounded. Ashe held no malice towards the enemy and arranged for the wounded RIC men to take them to hospital. However, the victory of Ashe was too short-lived when on Sunday, the 30th of April, he received word that he had to surrender. The Easter Rising was over. And although the Rising didn't have the support of the people in general, that was all to change with how the British responded. General Maxwell, Commander-in-Chief of the Crown Forces in Ireland, said it out plainly when he said that I have found it imperative to inflict the most severe sentences on the known organisers of this detestable rising and on those commanders who took an active part in the actual fighting of the Ford. It is hoped that these examples will be sufficient to act as a deterrent to intriguers, but nothing could be further from the truth. The actions of the authorities had a completely opposite effect and turned public opinion from one of anger against the volunteers into one of support. However, at this time there was every possibility that Ashe would follow in the footsteps of his comrades Tom Clark, Patrick Pearce and James Connolly, for he had been in command of the volunteers at Ashbourne, and he was more than ready to face his death. But pressure began to mount on the authorities after the initial executions, and they began to realise that if they continued with their plan to execute over 100 people, they would most certainly lose any hope of keeping the Irish people subdued. Thomas Ashe, as well as Eamon de Valera, along with many others, had been sentenced to death at a court-martial. In light of the changing situation, their sentences were commuted to penal servitude for life. Having been held at Maynham Jail to await his execution, he was then transferred to Mountjoy Jail, and then were deported firstly to Dartmoor Prison and then Lewes Prison in England. And with the public opinion change, we had pressure mounting on the government, and that saw the general amnesty of the main body of prisoners from Clonglock in December 1916. However, he still had over 100 volunteers, including Thomas Ashe and Eamon de Valera, that were still held in prison in England. And with this opinion change, we have Count Plunket and his success at the election in Roscommon in February 1917. And what's really interesting and very important to note is that when those men and women were released from prison, they didn't immediately take up the gun, which would have been so easy, or could easily happen. They decided that they would actually organise, reorganise and follow a line of passive resistance, civil disobedience and go down the political route. And you see that with the election of Count Plunket in Roscommon, and then of course the election of Joe McGuinness and Eamon de Valera declared and so on throughout 1917, and of course the general election success in 1918. But getting back to those that were still held in prison, they were seen as criminals and they were treated as such. And this was not to be accepted by Ashe and de Valera and so on. And they demanded to have prisoner of war status, and in protest they went on strike. They stopped work, broke the windows of furniture in their cells. Ashe and the others were transferred to Portland Prison, but pressure was still mounting on the government to release these prisoners. And finally, the government relented, and in June 1917, Thomas Ashe and his comrades returned home to Ireland to a hero's welcome. And Ashe wasted no time in getting to work. By now he was elected President of the Supreme Council of the IRB, a very, very important position. And the IRB was an organisation that was dedicated to freeing Ireland through whatever means necessary. And as I said, it is very important to note that they did not follow violence with violence. The violence came from the authorities, from the British government. The organisations were banned, you could not hold meetings without permits. And you see that every now and again they were being backed into a corner. However, they did resist. You do have the introduction of the RIC boycott, which was a very successful action that took place. And also on the campaign trail, you have men like Thomas Ashe campaigning for the election of his comrades to the Parliament. The success can be seen with, as I said, with the introduction of the RIC boycott and the continued success in the by-elections. And when you look at the Clare election, it is interesting to note that it was Thomas Ashe that was actually proposed to stand for election. However, he did refuse, and in his place, Eamon de Valera did stand and successfully won the seat, which was a momentous victory. And all the while, the authorities took note of everything that was going on. Martial law, which had been declared after the Easter Rising, had eventually been lifted, and the authorities still had the power to arrest the people for actually being to be threatening to the state under the defence of the Realm Act. Aware that any arrest of Republicans so soon after a release could aggravate the situation, and then more support to Sinn Féin, the authorities were reluctant to act, but this attitude was soon changed. By July and August, the authorities realised that Sinn Féin was becoming a real threat to the political status quo, and its members and members of the Irish Volunteers began to hold protest meetings and rallies which were drawing large numbers of people around the country. And one man in particular came under the radar of the authorities, and that was Thomas Ashe. Since his release in June, he regularly attended campaign meetings, speaking openly for the desire of an Irish Republic. And the authorities were not willing to let this continue. And after he made a speech at a meeting in Ballinolly in July, they issued a warrant for his arrest. The charge, making speeches that would be likely to incite disaffection amongst the civil population. And Ashe was eventually arrested in August and put on trial. Remembering his arrest, his comrade Cathal stated, "It is my belief the British picked him up in 1917 as he was the most dangerous opponent there was for rule. They were out to capture him and put him away." Ashe was court-martialed in Dublin Castle on the 3rd September. Despite the fact that there was no written evidence declared in what he'd actually said at the meeting in Ballinolly, just the recollections of 2 RIC constables, he was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years hard labour in Mountjoy jail. By now, the authorities had begun to arrest more and more people who they deemed to be a threat, including fellow carrymen Alston Stack and Fionnan Lynch, who were also sent to Mountjoy jail. But Ashe was seen as deliberately targeted for special treatment. Immediately on arrival in Mountjoy, his mattress was removed from his cell. It was meant to be returned to him within 2 weeks, but the prison authorities failed to do this. Ashe refused to be treated as a common criminal, just like he had done the year before. He was a political prisoner and refused to obey the prison rules, and further punishment followed. Despite the fact that they were not allowed to talk to each other, Ashe and his comrades managed to communicate and decided that they would draw up a list of demands to be treated as political prisoners, and they would then give them to the prison authorities. The Deputy Governor of Mountjoy, who they were given to, immediately rejected them outright. And this brings us to the last days of Thomas Ashe's life. Foreseeing that the prisoners would destroy their cells like they had done in England, on the 20th of September, the prison warders removed everything from their cells, their beds, their latrines, they even took their clothes and their boots. Initially, it had been decided that if the demands weren't met, the men, 40 in all, would go on hunger strike on the 1st of October. With the situation the way it was now, they brought that day forward. The hunger strike would begin that evening. At this time, Ashe hadn't even got a mattress in his cell and was forced to sleep on the floor with only his overcoat to keep him warm. The authorities wouldn't back down, but neither would the men. Word was sent to the Lord Mayor of Dublin, Lawrence O'Neill, who visited the prisoners and saw firsthand how they were being treated, including Thomas Ashe, who, according to O'Neill, was lying on the bare boards without bedding, seating, supportive or furniture of any kind. After O'Neill's visit, the men were given back the furniture and bedding, but that was the only concessions the authorities were going to make. 3 days later, the forced feeding of the prisoners began, which, according to the authorities, if administered properly, could do no harm. But again, this couldn't have been further from the truth. The men were force fed twice a day, and from the descriptions of those who endured it, it was a traumatic experience. That same day, Sunday, a protest meeting was held in Smithfield, attended by De Valera, Countess Margaret and Ashe's good friend, Cathal. The Lord Mayor once again visited Ashe on Monday and pleaded with him to end the strike, and Ashe's response was, "No, they have branded me as a criminal. Even though I do die, I die in a good cause." On Tuesday morning, the 25th of September, Ashe once more endured the trauma of forced feeding. It was performed not by the prison medical officer Dowdall, who had much experience in the practice, but instead by the less experienced Dr. Lowe. Soon after, Ashe began to deteriorate. On seeing Ashe after the procedure had been carried out, Dr. Dowdall realised something had gone wrong and had Ashe brought to the prison hospital. Realising that he was actually dying, Dowdall insisted to the governor that Ashe be released, and at 5 p.m. that evening, Ashe was transferred to the nearby Mater Hospital. Word spread outside as to what was happening, and a crowd gathered outside the hospital. But by 10:30 that night, Thomas Ashe was dead. He was only 42 years old. And to quote, "His end was unexpected, poignant, tragic. It stirred in Ireland more profoundly than the executions of the previous year." And this was true. In a little over a year, Britain had created yet another martyr for the Republican movement. But unlike the leaders of 1916, who were buried in secret within the confines of a prison yard, the volunteers and the people of Ireland would bury Thomas Ashe with dignity. The volunteers posted a guard of honour in the Manor Hospital. His remains were taken to Pro Cathedral, and from there they lay in state in City Hall, right under the nose of Dublin Castle. Thousands of people from all over the country came to pay their respects. On 1st of September, Thomas Ashe was laid to rest here in Glasnevin Cemetery, surrounded by his comrades in the Irish Volunteers, the Fianna, Fáil and the Irish Citizen Army. His close friend Michael Collins delivered the oration after the volunteers had fired a volley over the grave. And he said, "Nothing additional remains to be said. That volley which we have just heard is the only speech which is proper to make above the grave of a dead female." Over the coming years, a lot more would be said and done for the cause of Irish freedom. But who knows what would have happened if Thomas Ashe had lived. What we do know is that in his short life he made such a huge impact, not just on the Republican movement, but in his work with the Gaelic League, in his job as a teacher, and through his love of music. There is no doubt Thomas Ashe loved his country and he believed in our future. And it is only fitting to end with the words of Thomas Ashe himself. From his poem, "Let Me Carry a Cross for Ireland, Lord," he wrote, "Let me carry a cross for Ireland, Lord, the hour of a trial draws near, and the pangs and the pains of the sacrifice may be borne by comrades dear. But Lord, take me from the offering throng, there are many far less prepared, though anxious and all as the are to die, that Ireland may be spared." Thank you.
Good evening, Margaret, Liz. Agus inis, Laura Caradidish, Fianna Fáil, Dinner, ar an muinte leis lúte sa gaint a hug, Liz ar Balbeag, sé sin Cathal Brugha. Cathal Brugha is a grandson not only of Cathal Brugha, who was buried in this graveyard, but also of Terence McSweeney, who was subsequently to die on hunger strike in 1920. But I have to also say that Cathal has many achievements to his own name. Noi Fianna Fáil, Sean Cathal Brugha, a Hanahead, Hamas Ashe. And Cathal Brugha will now address you, followed by Gillian Coughlin of the Cushton 1916, a native abandoned, who will read the poem after Cathal is finished, "Let Me Carry Your Cross for Ireland, Lord," written by Thomas Ashe. Cathal, Iramar Chatalise ar Northern.
Accorda. The clear Eamon O'Crieve arm Larton and saw Oid Thomas Ashe. Tushgrave Thomas agus Ahar Crina Cathal Brugha on a cordule and a Kayla. The Holadar Asan Kulra Kina, Gra de Éireann, Da Culture, Da Tanga, Da Saoirse, Da Nas Blachas, agus Da Míltas, as son of winter. Thomas Ashe died because a junior doctor unaccustomed to force feeding put a tube down his lung instead of into his stomach. At 32, Ireland lost a multi-talented leader who for years had given everything to the movement for self-determination of the Irish nation. Thomas Ashe combined in one person the features of our great 1916 leaders. From his youth, he embodied the Republican spirit of rising zeal of Sean McDiarmid and his charm that attracted many to the cause wherever he went. His was the poetic, sensitive intellect of Thomas MacDonagh. He had Pádraig Pearse's dedication to teaching young children and his cultural and literary love of An Gaeilge. In Thomas's case, his Tanga Dúchais. As founder and leader of the Black Raven Pipe Band, he was the proud militant soldier piper that was Eamon Cant. He was a socialist like James Connolly, evident in his unfinished novel about how traditional profit-sharing ideas practiced amongst fishermen in West Kerry could change the lives of farm labourers in County Dublin. He had the organising capability of Joseph Plunkett. As a successful recruiter in America, as a military planner, and in his leadership of the 5th Dublin Battalion in the Battle of Ashbourne. He was a modern-day Fianna Fáil, noble leader of the Fianna, who inspired the Fenians, and whose tradition we inherit in Fianna Fáil. He was powerful on the field of battle, but also in hurling and football. He organised fashion and dances. O Black Clea Godon Queen was an excellent dancer and sang beautifully As Béarla agus As Gaeilge. He drew landscapes and portraits in oil and pencil. Indeed, he did everything well. He was truly an Irish Renaissance man. A century ago, Pádraig Pearse inspired the men of 1916 when he spoke near here over the grave of O'Donovan Rossa. Here today, we affirm that Thomas Ashe still inspires us. He is a reminder that it is important not to rule, but to serve. Not to get power, but to give to people. Not to let wrong continue, but to live in a way that is right for oneself and also for others. Thomas Ashe gave us his own testimony by how he lived. He also gave it in this poem he wrote a few months before his death, which Gillian will read now.
Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord. Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord. The hour of her trial draws near, and the pangs and the pains of the sacrifice may be borne by comrades dear. But, Lord, take me from the offering throng. There are many far less prepared, though anxious and all as they are to die, that Ireland may be spared. Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord. My cares in this world are few, and few are the tears that will fall for me when I go on my way to you. Spare, oh spare to their loved ones dear, the brother and son and sire, that the cause we love may never die in the heart of our land's desire. Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord. Let me suffer the pain and the shame. I bow my head to their rage and hate, and I take on myself the blame. Let them do with my body whate'er they will. My spirit I offer to you, that the faithful few who heard her call may be spared to Oration dhu. Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord, for Ireland weak with tears, for the aged man of the clouded brow and the child of tender years, for the empty homes of her golden plains, for the hopes of her future too. Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord, for the cause of Oration dhu.
For the minute market, Gillian, agus scríbú an dán sin, nuair a bhí Thomas Ashe, mar frísúnach is asna Lewis prison. That poem was written when Thomas Ashe was a prisoner in Lewis prison in England. And now we'll have the wreath laying. Oh, have we got the wreath? And it'll be laid by Pádraig Ashe and by Catherine Ardan. Catherine represents a new generation of political representatives from Fianna Fáil in the Oireachtas. And Pádraig Ashe is a grandnephew of Thomas Ashe. His grandfather moved to County Kildare in the land swap, and Pádraig Ashe and the family have lived there since. I think it's worth noting that Thomas Ashe's sister, Nora, was a founder member of Fianna Fáil and was also a shareholder in the Irish press from its inception. One other thing that's interesting is the testimony of Nora Ashe in the Military Bureau archives, in the Bureau of Military History, 1913-1921. And she wrote as follows about the Battle of Ashburn. Thomas said to the police who took part in the fight at Ashburn, he said that they were not all a bad lot. One of them asked permission to go home to his sick wife, and Thomas gave it. They would do anything for him afterwards. While he was in prison, the police kept his gun and sword polished and in good order for him until he came back. After the wreath laying, immediately the band are going to play the Wrap the Green Flag Round Me Boys as a lament. So I'd ask the people who are doing the wreath laying, Catherine and Patrick, to stand forward, and we have the wreath here, and together on behalf of Fianna Fáil and on behalf of the Ashe family to lay the wreath in honour of Thomas Ashe. Good evening, Ashe, Jera rev out on the Vian, we will be concluding with out on the Vian. A boil and couple of fucking boichish are while I'm not about the boichish for la glockala untibus Glasnevin. I'd like to thank the Glasnevin Cemetery Trust for all of the assistance in organising this event, and particularly my thanks to George McCullough and to Liz Fitzpatrick, who have been extraordinarily helpful to me and to Fianna Fáil in making sure that this event would be a success. I want to thank Sean Dorgan, our General Secretary, and particularly Anne Quinn, who puts a huge amount of effort into all of these commemorations, and the other members of the headquarters staff. I want to thank the Cushta 1917-1921 Tá siad sanna díana anober go Joe, and I know that Rory O'Hanlon has come all the way down, if you don't mind me mentioning Rory, ex-County Minister from County Monaghan, but I also know that a large number, and I'm not going to mention names because I forget somebody, a large number of ex-TDs and senators are here today, and I deeply appreciate the fact that they've come. I'd like also to thank you for coming here, and then the people that took part, everybody, Liz Gillis, Cathal Rowe, Gillian Coughlin, are on our guard. And I just finally would like to mention the members of the Oireachtas are here. I know there are a number of councillors as well, but the members of the Oireachtas. First of all, Darragh O'Brien, who had two relatives involved in 1916. Sean Haughey, who of course is the grandson of Sean Lemass, who was one of the not only 1916 participants, but would have been a comrade of the people that were commemorating at these events. Senator Mark Daly, who came from Kerry, and it's nice that the Kerry contingent here. We thought you'd be in the All-Ireland, Mark, but didn't work out like that. John Curran, John Lahart, and Senator Jerry Harkin, and again, if I've left anybody out, you could excuse me because it's hard to see everybody with the bad weather. So just to say thanks to all of you for coming, and it's good to see a good attendance. It has turned out to be a very, very wet day, and we will finish with Out on the Vian. Agus Tasula Manish, Gachasa Koloana, Eran, La Out on the Vian, Agus in Shin, by Gerard National Culture, Agus Valajerum, the Gospel of the Calum with, Sweenom with, Homasage, Lech, Villa, Agus Dinna Ildana, a full boss of Son Hayden, Gira Kate Lianochain, and Visha. Good to meet you, Mahagad.